It is 3 a.m. in New York, 8 in Abuja, and 4 on a Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Geunhye. You're watching ARIRANG Korea's only global network. Now, the probe into the shadowy family network that owned the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry has been progressing quite slowly in recent days as some key people have been refusing to show up for questioning. This stonewalling has prompted the prosecution to get tough. Our Geunhye has the latest.
The weeks-long investigation into the Sewol-ho ferry disaster is struggling to shift into top gear as key figures are refusing to show up for questioning. In order to turn the screws on the no-shows, prosecutors are raising the legal stakes. Yoo Byung-on, the former Sewol Group chairman and practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry's operator Cheongjin Marine Company, has been summoned to appear before prosecutors on Friday by 10 a.m. This comes after Yoo's two sons and first daughter failed to appear for questioning. Prosecutors have been granted an arrest warrant for the first son, Yoo Dae-gyun. They have been camped out at his house in southern Seoul since Tuesday morning. With no sign of him, authorities are considering forcing the doors to his home open, but it's believed he may be hiding out at a different location. The Yoo family and its close associates are suspected of being involved in embezzlement and tax evasion, which could have had a direct influence on the ferry sinking. The latest investigations have revealed that Yoo Byung-on was involved in the management of the ship just 2 months before the accident. That's why the Joint Investigation Headquarters believes Yoo could be the top person in charge and the person most responsible for the disaster. Meanwhile, financial authorities are delving deeper in possible monetary irregularities. The Financial Supervisory Service says it began a new probe a couple of days ago on the National Federation of Fisheries Cooperatives and Sinan Capital, which have granted loans to Yoo Byung-on's associates in the past. This comes as financial authorities vowed to leave no stone unturned with relation to Yoo's finances. Geunhye, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye, who is soon expected to apologize to the nation for the government's failure to prevent the recent ferry disaster, continued discussing related matters with her cabinet this Tuesday. Now, referring to similar discussions she had with senior secretaries over the weekend, President Park asked cabinet members for their ideas on laying the groundwork for a national emergency response system. Now, after apologizing directly to the people, the president will give details of a new master plan to bolster national safety and a new ministry to oversee emergency response and management. She is also expected to talk about reforms in public service to root out irregularities that are blamed for having caused the ferry disaster. Meanwhile, in waters off Korea's southwestern coast where the Sewol-ho sank nearly a month ago, search divers got back in the water this Tuesday, 3 days after suspending operations due to poor weather conditions. They have recovered one body from the vessel so far today, pushing the confirmed death toll to 276. 28 people remain unaccounted for. Now that they're back inside the ferry, the divers are trying to gain access to areas that have been blocked off due to obstructions. And raising the sense of urgency, authorities say the walls inside the sunken vessel are weakening and are at risk of collapsing. As such, they're trying to secure new routes into the hull. Favorable weather conditions are forecast at the accident site this week, but underwater currents are expected to strengthen. Safety first. It's a phrase that Koreans have taken to heart in recent weeks following the deadly Sewol-ho ferry accident. So much so that safety reform is emerging as the #1 campaign issue leading up to local elections on June 4th. Here's our political correspondent Ji Myung-gil with more.
The government's poor initial response to the Sewol-ho ferry accident last month has outraged the Korean public. The insufficient safety measures and lack of capacity to handle such accidents are likely to dominate the campaign period over the next few weeks, heading into Election Day on June 4th. Both the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy have called on the National Assembly to conduct a special investigation to come up with ways to help lawmakers write better bills aimed at preventing future accidents. The ruling party's candidate for Seoul Mayor Chung Mong-jun promised he would prioritize safety issues if elected and carry out massive reforms on the capital's safety management system. Current Seoul Mayor Park Won-sun has also decided to put the issue at the center of his election campaign to reflect mounting public demands for a safer Seoul. It's something we're likely to see in the other metropolitan and provincial races leading up to June 4th. With public distrust of government growing in recent weeks in light of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, the results on election day could very well depend on which party the people trust more to institute change. 지명길, 아리랑 뉴스.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Geunhye, every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
North Korea has warned that a South Korean official will pay the price for saying the North must disappear soon. Well, South Korean Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-seok said during Monday's press briefing that North Korea is not a real country and exists for the benefit of just one person. It's dictator Kim Jong-un. So North Korea was responding to this, and in its state-run website, it said the regime would mercilessly punish anyone who slanders its leader and system. It provided no details on how it planned to go about doing that. Now, shifting our focus, Japan is taking big strides in its push to regain the right to collective self-defense, or the ability to react militarily in certain, however limited, situations. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is expected to hold a press conference on this issue after he receives a report from his security advisory panel later this week. Here's our Hwang Sung-hee with the details.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may soon be one step closer to his wish of making his country a greater military power. Japan's state-run broadcaster NHK reported Monday that Abe's Security Advisory Panel will submit a report this week in support of Tokyo's right to collective self-defense. The Japanese leader is expected to hold a press conference when the report is submitted to shore up public support for lifting the self-imposed ban. According to Kyodo News Agency, Japan will exercise the right only when contingencies in surrounding areas, including the Korean peninsula, pose a direct threat to Japan's security. The Abe administration has reportedly drawn up a series of scenarios under which collective self-defense can be exercised, which include a nearby country coming under attack and a conflict in surrounding areas posing a great security threat to Japan. Abe wants to finalize Tokyo's collective self-defense policy within the first half of this year. Meanwhile, Korea and Japan will hold a second round of talks on Thursday on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry says the two-day talks between Lee Sang-deok, Korea's Director General for Northeast Asian Affairs, and his Japanese counterpart, Junichi Ihara, will take place in Tokyo as a follow-up to a meeting held last month in Seoul. Lee is expected to reiterate Seoul's demand for an official apology and legal compensation from Japan for the Japanese military's wartime sexual slavery of Korean women. Tokyo claims the issue was resolved through a 1965 treaty when the two countries normalized diplomatic ties. Around 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese army in comfort stations in the early 20th century. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
A video purporting to show around 130 of the schoolgirls kidnapped in Nigeria almost a month ago has been released by the Islamist group Boko Haram. The group's leader says they would be held until all imprisoned militants had been freed. Boko Haram abducted more than 200 girls in northern Nigeria on April 14th and threatened to sell them. Shin Se-min reports.
A new video has been released by the leader of Boko Haram, who says he will free the nearly 300 schoolgirls who were kidnapped by the terror group 1 month ago if detained members of his terror group are released from Nigerian prisons. The 27-minute video gives the world its first glimpse of some of the teenage girls who were kidnapped in mid-April from their boarding school in the northern state of Borno. About 136 girls are shown in the video, just under half of the total abducted. They are seen dressed in colorless hijabs, many of them barefoot, citing the first verse of the Quran. Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shakau says in the video that the schoolgirls have converted to Islam.
والله بالله الذي لا إله إلا هو هؤلاء البنات لا نتركهن إلا بعد ما تركتم إخواننا.
Nigeria's interior minister has rejected the offer, but the information ministry said all options would be explored. Local officials have begun distributing the video to families of the victims in an attempt to identify them. The nation is now getting international help in securing their release. The U.S. and U.K. already have teams on the ground, and an Israeli counterterrorism team is on its way to the country. French President François Hollande also invited European and American officials, along with leaders from Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, to a summit on Saturday that will focus on countering the prolonged Boko Haram threat. The militant group has been engaged in a violent campaign against the Nigerian government since 2009. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
In other news, the complete melting of the western part of Antarctica appears unstoppable, according to new research. Now, the irreversible thaw linked to global warming could raise sea levels higher than expected and impact tens of millions of people this century. Here's our Connie Lee.
Large glaciers in West Antarctica are melting away, and nothing is likely to stop it. Through a telephone news conference held by NASA on Monday, scientists raised concerns that the irreversible melting is occurring faster than expected, and that the ice in the Amundsen Sea area could raise global sea levels by more than a meter. That's higher than researchers previously anticipated. "We've passed the point of no return," said NASA glaciologist Eric Rigno on NASA's website. He said it's merely a matter of time before the glaciers completely disappear. A consequence of human-induced climate change, scientists say that warm water has been melting the underside of the floating ice at a speed of about 1 kilometer per year. The joint publication by NASA and the University of California, Irvine used satellite data and aircraft studies in the area dating back 40 years. Scientists say that the complete meltdown could take hundreds of years, but the effects of the melting process could be felt this century. A recent climate report by the United Nations predicts that by the year 2100, sea levels could rise from about half a meter to nearly a meter, which can then displace tens of millions of people who live in coastal areas worldwide. Just last week, U.S. President Barack Obama warned that climate change was already happening and not in the distant future. And the latest study is evidence that some of the damage is already irreversible. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Korea's exports of products related to information and technology and communications were up by 4.5% on year in April. Now, nearly $15 billion worth of ICT products were shipped out last month on the back of strong demand from China and the United States. Trade officials say strong exports of mobile handsets and semiconductors offset external uncertainties, including unstable consumer sentiment in emerging economies. The $7.5 billion surplus in the sector last month contributed to the nation's overall trade surplus. Now, Samsung Electronics shares remain strong despite all. The tech giant grabbed a bigger stake of the global tablet PC market in the first quarter of this year. Market research firm Strategy Analytics says Samsung made up 22.6% of the tablet PC market share in the first 3 months. While Apple held on to its #1 position with 29% market share, but analysts do note a significant drop in Apple's figures, with the company having enjoyed a 40% market share in tablet PCs in the first quarter of last year. noting that Samsung has been able to expand its presence through diverse product portfolios. The research firm predicted the South Korean firm would continue to narrow the gap with Apple. Samsung Electronics chairman Geunhye is recovering from his heart attack and is currently receiving hypothermia treatment in the hospital. The Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul says Mr. Lee was scheduled to end the treatment this morning, but the doctors decided to continue with it to minimize any possible damage to the 72-year-old's heart and brain. Now, hypothermia treatment keeps the body at a temperature of between 32 to 34 degrees Celsius to prevent toxic materials from generating in the blood. Well, even after that treatment ends, doctors say they will keep Lee sedated for the time being. He is reportedly in stable condition and breathing on his own. And following that heart attack that hospitalized Chairman Geunhye, he is a man who played a huge role in making Samsung Electronics one of the biggest companies in the world. The 72-year-old chairman remains in hospital, but his sudden health scare has not spooked investors at all. In fact, as our Kim Ji-yeon reports, the company's share price has shot up over the last 2 days.
One day after Samsung Electronics chairman Geunhye was hospitalized, shares of the tech giant gained the most they had in 9 months. Shares of the company jumped 4% on Monday, closing the day at around $1,400. They continue with the gains on Tuesday as well, up nearly 0.9%. Analysts say Samsung's succession plan played a big part in the gain, as the company has a contingency for such events. Lee's son Jae-yong is likely to inherit Samsung Electronics, the flagship of the group. He and his 2 sisters will be splitting up some of the group's other affiliates. Chairman of Advanced Capital Partners James Rooney told ARIRANG that efforts to make the group's governance system and the succession plan should help it stay globally competitive.
I view the recent changes as being positive. They clearly had Geunhye's hand involved in them. Therefore, the man who probably knows the most about the Samsung Group was behind the architecture of the changes that have been made. I expect that Samsung today is in probably as good a condition as it could be under the circumstances of its chairman's health challenges.
The succession is also expected to speed up the restructuring of Samsung Group. Samsung Securities Company, Korea's largest brokerage by market value, will sell its entire stake to Samsung Life Insurance Company. Another affiliate information and communication technology provider, Samsung SDS Company, plans to sell shares in Korea this year. This is not the first time Chairman Lee's failing health had been in the minds of global investors. Lee was hospitalized back in 2008 and again in 2009, but both times shares of Samsung Electronics gained. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, the episode of Samsung chairman Geunhye's heart attack raises questions over how long the 72-year-old Lee will remain at the top of that company he turned into a global power. So how will this impact Asia's biggest technology company and the world's largest maker of smartphones? For an in-depth discussion, our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, joins us live in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, first off, one big puzzle is market reaction to this news. I mean, with the health trouble of the chairman, Samsung stocks actually rose rather than fell yesterday and today. How do we explain this?
Actually, indeed, that's a very interesting question and important one for that matter. The thing is, Samsung has been around for quite some time now, and they have gone through they have gone through different kind of troubles before, but they have also gone through similar troubles before. And what's happening is the investors, in my belief and beliefs of other analysts, investors have gained so-called the learning effect. Before, what happened was when this kind of similar troubles happened, initially some of the stocks went down, but immediately they started going up, the prices themselves. So from those experiences, we are quite certain that investors have learned that kind of track record in the past and had expected the price overall to rise. That's probably one reason for that. And also, other analysts are saying basically for Samsung, the trouble this time is not exactly the absence of the leadership or weakening of the leadership itself, because Chairman Geunhye has been kind of moving himself out of the leadership role, active leadership role, for the past several years so far. And some people are saying, well, look, Apple's case, Steve Jobs was heavily involved in designing the iPhones themselves, but the thing is, Chairman Geunhye has not much to do with the designing of Galaxy phones to begin with, right? So he has been more focused on overall changing of the governance structure and changing of the shareholding structure of the Samsung Group to get the group itself prepared for the coming transition of the leadership. So a lot of investors know that and face that fact outright, and they're saying the issue for Samsung Group has been the governance itself. And then actually, this kind of a change could actually add to the momentum to the transition towards the change itself, which has been needed for the group entirely. So the people must be taking this as some kind of positive news.
Right. So from the second generation of the Lee family to the third generation, which includes Lee Jae-yong, I believe.
Exactly.
Right. So how is Samsung Group as a whole coping with the chairman's health troubles?
In many other chaebol groups in Korea, when situations like this happen, they actually enter so-called emergency management system. But Samsung has never done it before. And so this time, same thing again. They're running the group in a normal way. Officially, Samsung Group is run based on different vehicles here, and usually what they have is called CEO's meeting or a president's meeting. Presidents of different Samsung Group of companies gathering together on Wednesdays, and they discuss different kind of issues. And then behind or below this CEO's president's meeting, they have so-called the brand management committee and then also investment coordination committee. So the CEO president meeting and then these two committees underneath them. That's how Samsung as a group is run. And that's the system that they are relying upon despite this kind of new change. So it's being managed officially in a normal way.
Right. Like you mentioned, the 72-year-old, of course, is not thought to play a major day-to-day role in the running of the company, with especially 3 CEOs serving below him. But he is still believed to have a final say in major strategic planning and decisions.
Right.
Now, how might the balance of power play out when the chairman eventually steps down?
When you say 3 CEOs, the 3 children?
Yes.
Okay. Lee Jae-yong, Lee Bu-jin, and Lee So-yeon.
Yes,
right.
Correct.
Exactly. And Lee Jae-yong is the vice chairman of the Samsung Electronics Group, and he's the only son. And according to Korean tradition, looks like he's going to be the one who will actually succeed most of his role, Lee Geunhye's role. But of course, we have strong players such as Lee Bu-jin, first daughter, and then the youngest daughter, Lee So-yeon now. Leading different parts of the group. And so, for sure, the overall sphere of influence, scope of influence that Lee Jae-yong, his son, will inherit will be smaller and limited than what his father has enjoyed so far. And of course, it will be greatly shared by Lee Bu-jin and Lee So-yeon. We'll have to wait and see on this, but learning from other chaebol's experience, what we know is as the chaebol's ownership changes hands in terms of different generation, they have a tendency to be further broken down. So what we will see is increasingly more independent Samsung groups of companies or sub-Samsung groups of companies emerging. Right. That's what we have seen in Hyundai's case. After the founder's passing, what we saw was Hyundai Motor Group and then Hyundai, original Hyundai Group and also Hyundai Heavy Group acting as more of independent groups. So probably that's what we'll get to see for the future of Samsung Group.
Right. In fact, that was the speculation that was actually in the market, I suppose, that a succession is actually in the works, maybe within the family, especially with the latest announcement by Samsung SDS that it will go public by the end of the year.
Right, indeed. Now, Samsung SDS going IPO, the going public is a very big news, and we will probably have to deal with this in a separate segment here. But with Samsung SDS going public, there are other issues to watch here, such as even those companies that have a tighter space in terms of controlling the group, the mechanism of controlling the group, such as Samsung Life and then Samsung Everland. So we have to watch closely what happens to the shares of Samsung Life and then Samsung Everland together with Samsung SDS as Samsung SDS shares go public. And this entails a lot of technical discussions, so hopefully we'll get to talk about these more. But definitely, to answer your question, definitely Samsung SDS going public has very close bearing to the overall efforts to go ahead with the succession efforts, handing down the overall control, whether it's a de facto control or a de jure control over the group to the next generation. For sure, that is happening. And it's interesting that the announcement about Samsung IPO, public offering, was announced before Geunhye's health struggle.
Right. All right. Well, Samsung definitely one that will be closely watched by everyone around the world, as it really, it amounts to a quarter of the nation's GDP here.
Indeed.
Definitely something that we will be on the lookout for.
For sure.
Thank you, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
And that is your business today on this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. Do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.